Hello, I'd like to welcome Dr. Beverly Smallwood to the Gibson podcast. I have some questions for her about stress. So, here's the first question. What does high functioning stress actually mean? And why is it so often missed? Second question would be, why do the people who seem to be handling everything sometimes turn out to be the closest to coming apart? What are the early warning signs people should watch out for in themselves? What about in someone they love? How do you spot it in a spouse, a friend, or a colleague? Why is our culture so good at rewarding the very behaviors that wear people down? What's the difference between genuine recovery and just taking a break? For someone listening who recognizes themselves in this, what's the first small step they can take? Is there hope for people who feel like they've been running on empty for years? I'd also like to ask you about your book and the Hope Center, which is a project which seems to be very important to you. I would like to thank you for appearing on the Gibson podcast.
This is going to be in response to the question about what does high functioning stress actually mean and why is it so often missed? So, Mark, high functioning stress is really stress that's been rewarded somewhere along the way and often early in life. The person learned that producing, performing, and holding it all together is what earns them love and approval and safety. So we get very, very good at it, and the world keeps on reinforcing it. So from the outside, it looks like competence, but from the inside, it feels like running a marathon. You can't stop. And it really doesn't look like what we usually think of as stress. We may think of somebody as falling apart or tears or missed deadlines and so on. But high functioning stress is different than that. It is where the person shows up early, always does exactly what they're supposed to do, never complains, seems to have it all together, and they get praised for it and promoted for it. They're told, "I don't know how you do it all." But meanwhile, on the inside, those wheels are turning faster and faster. So that's why very often people don't even notice the stress, even the person who's living inside it. All right, I'm going to go to that culture one. Hold on, I'm getting there. So you might ask, why is our culture so good at rewarding the very behaviors that wear people down? So here's why. Productivity has it's almost become like a moral category. We don't just admire people who get a lot done, we treat them as more worthy or more valuable, just better somehow. So the high achiever gets that message even from childhood. And they start to believe that their output is their worth and that if they produce, they matter. And if they stop producing, they don't matter. So every system seems to reinforce it. Workplaces reward the person who never says no. Families, they lean on the one that always shows up, and communities turn to the same dependable ones over and over. Even our compliments give it away. I just don't know how you do it all. So we're not praising effort, we're praising self erasure dressed up like a virtue. And the people that are really most vulnerable to this are usually the most conscientious. They're the most caring, the most committed. The very qualities that make them wonderful also make it hard for them to stop. They're not lazy people who need motivating. There certainly aren't that, but they're tired people who need permission. But the culture around them and the inner voice inside them separates productivity from worth, and the wheel keeps on turning. All right, hold on. I'm going to get back to another question. And this is going to be now the third one. Why do the people who seem to be handling everything sometimes turn out to be the closest to coming apart? So, Mark, the very competence that we admire is doing two things at once. It's getting the work done, but it's hiding the cost. And when someone spent years being rewarded for holding it all together, they get really skilled at holding on, and they can keep functioning long past the point where most people would have asked for help. So that's good up to a point, but the trouble is that the body and the heart keep score even when the mind insists everything's fine. Chronic stress without real recovery shows up eventually in your sleep, in blood pressure, in immune function, in a creeping numbness, in a short fuse even with people they love most. So by the time someone like that finally cracks, it's not because they suddenly fell apart. It's because they've been quietly running on reserves for years. And after a while, the reserves run out. The crash looks sudden, but it almost never is. And that's why there are often the people that say, I had no idea I was this close to the edge. And the truth is, they didn't because the disguise worked on them too. Okay. What are the early warning signs that people should watch for in themselves? The signs aren't dramatic. That's the trap. People are waiting for a breakdown that announces itself, and instead, the warning signs are quiet. A few that I see again and again are sleep that won't come even though you're exhausted, or a short fuse with the people you love most while you stay perfectly composed when you're at work. Losing interest in things that used to bring you joy, or physical symptoms like headaches, gut issues, jaw clenching, fatigue, and there's no clear medical cause. So you might get a just a creeping sense of just kind of going through the motions, or difficulty being alone with your own thoughts so that you reach for the phone or the food or the wine or the scrolling or the work itself just to take the edge off. Now, Mark, none of these by themselves means that you're in crisis. But if you read that list or listened to it and several of them sounded like you, that's worth paying attention to. The body is trying to tell you something that the mind has been talking over already. So the earlier you recognize the pattern, the gentler the recalibration. You don't have to wait until something forces the conversation. Okay, here's the question. What about in someone they love? How do you spot it? Then a spouse, a friend, or a colleague. Hold on, I have to check something. Okay. So, how do you spot it in a spouse, a friend, or a colleague? Well, there are a few things to watch for. First, the gap between what they show in the public and the private version. So, at work, they seem to be poised, professional, or capable, but at home, they're irritable and withdrawn and unusually quiet. That gap is information. The second thing to watch for is the reflexive, I'm fine. So if every check in gets the same quick answer, I'm fine, and the topic gets changed, well, that's often somebody managing the conversation rather than letting you in. And the third thing to watch for is this: in the small things, they've stopped doing the hobby they used to love. They're not sleeping well. They're drinking a little more in the evenings, or they're glued to their phone in a way they didn't used to be. The big stuff usually shows up first as small stuff. And four, trust your gut. People who love a high functioning person often feel something is off long before they can name it. They're told everything's fine and they want to believe it, but something doesn't add up. And guess what? Your intuition is usually right. So, what do you do? Well, the most loving thing you can do is not confront, it's to create space. It's something like, I've noticed you seem tired in a deeper way lately. I'm not trying to fix it. I just want you to know I see you and I'm here whenever you want to talk. And now, what's the difference between genuine recovery and just taking a break? Well, a bubble bath doesn't fix it. A weekend away doesn't fix it. Even a 2-week vacation doesn't fix it, even though vacations often when the people first notice how depleted they actually are because the adrenaline finally stops and they can feel what's underneath. Genuine recovery is something different. It's rebuilding relationship between effort and rest, between productivity and worth. It's learning, often for the first time, that you don't have to earn the right to exist. And Mark, that's interior work. It involves looking at the beliefs underneath the behavior. Where did I learn that I'm only valuable when I'm producing? Whose voice is that? And is it still true? So it involves practicing rest without guilt. And that's harder than it sounds. It involves saying no to things you used to say yes to automatically, and then tolerating the discomfort of disappointing people. A break gives the body a pause. Recovery rewires the system that put you there. One is a coffee break, the other is a renovation. And the good news is that renovation is doable, but it's not done in a weekend and it's rarely done alone. So, the next question for someone listening who recognizes himself in this, what's a small first step? Well, I'd offer two. The first is honesty, just with yourself. Sit down somewhere quiet with no phones and ask, how am I actually doing? And not the version I tell people or not the version I tell myself when I'm just pushing through. How am I really doing? Most high functioning people don't ask themselves that question and haven't asked it in a long time. And the answer, when it finally comes, is often surprising. Sorry for the little delay there. Hopefully, you can edit that out. The second suggestion is honest conversation with someone, a spouse, a beloved friend or trusted counselor, a pastor, a doctor, somebody that can hear you without rushing to fix it. So, saying it out loud to one safe person changes because it changes you, it changes something because the disguise has been working partly because no one knows it's a disguise. Now, notice, hey, I'm not suggesting you quit your job or blow up your life or make any big decisions. The first step is really not dramatic, it's quiet. It's just turning toward the truth instead of away from it. And once you've done that, the next steps tend to reveal themselves. But that first turn, the honesty, that's where it begins. And the final question. I'm going to get something to drink just before I go into it. Hold on. And the question is there hope for people who feel like they've been running on empty for years? Absolutely, yes. And I don't say that lightly. I've been doing this work for a very long time, over 40 years. And one of the most consistent things I've seen is how restorable people really are, even people who are sure they've already passed the point of no return. Here's the truth, Mark. The human system is very resilient. So when you stop the bleeding, sleep starts to return. The fog lifts. Joy that had gone quiet starts to come back, sometimes in just small flickers. Relationships that had grown thin can deepen again when you're actually present in them. So none of that happens overnight, and none of it happens by accident, but it happens. And the earlier you start, the gentler that restoration and recalibration. But earlier doesn't mean only if you catch it earlier. It means earlier than wherever you are right now is better than later. There's no version of this story where it's too late to begin. And one more thing, the people I've watched come through this don't just go back to who they were before. They come out wiser. They come out more grounded and clearer about what really matters. They're being better at saying no and better at saying yes at the right things and better at being with the people they love. That hard road, if you walk it honestly, doesn't just heal you, it teaches you. That's a gift that the marathon never could have given you. And Mark, I'm going to just do some closing words here. So thank you so much, Mark, for allowing me to be with you on the Gibson podcast. It's been a pleasure to work with you.